So I was thinking tonight might be fun to talk about the microbiome. You guys think so?
Yes.
Okay, good. Yay. So the microbiome is like one of my favorite topics. It's super cool and it pertains to everything. And I think like we all have a sense of kind of what it might be, but we're not really sure. So, what the microbiome is all of the microbes that exist in and on the body that are part of us that help us to stay alive and to thrive. And so, the microbiome, that particular word technically means all of the bacteria, but it's come across in general to represent the entire microbiome. So there's the microbiome, which is all the bacteria in and on the body. There's the virome, which is all the viruses in and on the body. There's the mycobiome, which is all the funguses and yeasts, or fungi and yeasts in and on the body that help the body to thrive. So microbiota might be the more accurate term for all of those things put together, but microbiome is the popular word, so that's the one that we use. I think we do that a lot where we pick out a word that doesn't really represent what the thing is, but that's what we call it anyway. So the microbiome is fascinating because it affects everything about us. It affects our mind, it affects our emotions, it affects our ability to break down and process food. It's responsible for creating nutrients that our own cells can't make or that we're not getting from our food that we're eating. So it's like hugely important. It helps the body to detoxify. It helps the body to function. And we don't even know all the ways that it does all of these things, and we don't even know how it affects all these things. It has a role to play in hormonal regulation. It's like huge, everything that it does. Some researchers are saying that when I did the microbiome book, pretty much all the researchers that I read about said that the microbiome and gut health is directly the causative factor behind autoimmune conditions. And so that's huge because even allergies are an autoimmune condition, asthma, and then like rheumatoid arthritis and Sjogren's and, so many things. So to say that the gut microbiome is like a causative factor behind that is like a completely new way of looking at medicine. It's not looking at the immune system as a causative factor or as the problem. It's looking at a completely different system of the body. And some researchers, well, again, all of the researchers that I looked at call the microbiome the microbial organ. So the fact that they're saying that it's an organ is huge because that makes it as important as your heart, as your liver, as your brain. It's an organ. And basically, we have like a 1-to-1 ratio. For every human cell, there's a microbial cell in the body. So, and there's like, just in the gut, there's like 5 pounds of microbes or something like that. I forget. It weighs more than the brain. So
Don't they hang out down by the seacombe, or?
They hang out everywhere. They hang out everywhere that I know of. The one place that I didn't find a lot of information on was the small intestine. So like if somebody has small intestine bacterial overgrowth or SIBO, which is kind of synonymous with a lot of autoimmune conditions, and it creates a lot of like gas and bloating and abdominal discomfort. You just always feel your stomach. You always feel something's off digestively when you have SIBO. And
SIBO?
yep, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. So that is caused by microbes that aren't supposed to be in the small intestine colonizing the small intestine. So somehow they're getting, most likely from the large intestine into the small intestine and just staying there, or they're coming in with some food and they're sticking in there. So it can be good microbes, or microbes that we look at as being good microbes, but they're in the wrong spot.
Can you, by using your acupuncture, can you move them for us if they were in the wrong spot?
Well,
I mean, can acupuncture help with that, or how would one know if they have SIBO?
so we wouldn't call it SIBO in Chinese medicine. We'd say it's a spleen qi deficiency, most likely. And a lot of different things can be a spleen qi deficiency. But the symptoms of that people usually present with
Is
are
it what,
that
the
are
stomach
classic
pain or
spleen.
just
It's a lot of bloating.
bloating?
Yeah, bloating and gas, feeling full when you don't eat a lot, irregular bowel movements, constipation. Sometimes there'll be like ice cream, soft ice cream. It's different for different people, but the thing I've seen the most is the bloating. Some people, even people that have celiac disease or an allergy to wheat, don't even have digestive symptoms when they have small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. They'll have burping, excessive burping, which isn't not a digestive system issue, but it's not that this part of the body is even bothering them. They just notice that they burp a lot. Or like with celiac disease, which is different than that, they'll get a skin rash. They won't get any digestive trouble, so they won't even know that their problem is rooted in their gut. So the microbes that exist in and on the body are pretty much everywhere. There are microbes in the breast tissue, in the vagina, in the eyes, in the ears, in the nose, in the belly button, in your armpits, in your groin, everywhere on your skin. I talked to a virologist once that said that the reason that she doesn't like antimicrobial soaps isn't because they kill the microbes on the skin. It's because what they end up doing, and all the hand sanitizer that people are using, is breaking down when microbes create a colony, they can create a biofilm. And this biofilm is a protective barrier that keeps them from getting killed by their environment. And this protective barrier also can have like pathways in it where information is exchanged between the microbes and nutrition gets filtered to the microbes through this biofilm. So the biofilm on the hands, on the skin, is what gets destroyed from all of the hand sanitizers and antimicrobial soaps, which your skin dries out because those microbes aren't there to protect your skin anymore with that biofilm.
Wow.
Yeah. And the image that I like to give people, because most of us know about, even if we don't know about layaway, I'm sorry, we know about the Charlie Brown character, Pigpen. Do you know Pigpen? Okay. Because like Charlie Brown, there used to be like cartoons on when we were little with Charlie Brown. So, people our age definitely know Pigpen. But so Pigpen's got like all the flies coming off him and all these things, and dirt, and he's like walking and there's clouds coming. That's what we're like. So we don't just have an auric field, we have a microbial cloud around us.
Wow.
That we are constantly shedding.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. So they did a study, and in this study, they had people come in, they sterilized an entire room and the air vents and everything. And then they'd have somebody come in and sit in a chair for like 45 minutes or 2 hours or something like that and read. And then they would test where their microbes went in the room. and what microbes they were emitting. And what they found was that the microbes that colonize the vaginal canal are pretty much always left on the chairs that women sit on.
Wow.
Through their clothes. Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
That's why I don't go to movie theaters.
That's why you don't take microbiology in, in college, right? Yeah. Yeah. So it's wild. Like, and then there are these scientists that are really into using microbes to enrich our spaces. So trying to figure out ways to create devices that you can like have in your home or have in your office that emit microbes that like kill viruses and mold spores and stuff like that. So using microbes to kill microbes. And we do this already as a medical treatment in certain bladder cancers. They actually take tuberculosis toxin. They take tuberculosis and they inject it into people's bladders that that are either at a certain stage or of a certain type of this cancer. And the tuberculosin toxin kills the cancer cells specifically.
Wow.
That's the treatment. Isn't that wild? So they've been researching about different people's microbiomes, and each single one of us has a completely different microbial signature. So as unique, you know how they say like your fingerprint is one of a kind, completely unique, so is your microbial signature. So each one of us, no one has the same microbiome in and on their body. And so, I mean, that right there is like huge, because like, what do you say is healthy and what do you say is unhealthy? And that'll get me to fecal transplants. But first, the microbes that are inside the vaginal canal are very similar to the ones that are in the breast tissue. And so, like with the Metagenics formula, the woman's Ultraflora Women's, I give that out a lot of times to people when they're having a lot of UTIs or a lot of yeast infections, vaginal yeast infections, because those strains that are in that particular probiotic formula are the researched strains that they know do good things inside a woman's body to keep the pH what it's supposed to be and everything in the vaginal tract. But because I know that those microbes are also in the breast tissue, if somebody has, like a friend of mine is recovering for breast cancer, so that's the probiotic that I recommend that she takes as well. Because I haven't been able to find like a breast cancer probiotic yet. They'll make it, I'm sure. They won't be able to call it that. But this woman's Ultraflora, that's why I give that to people in that scenario. Or if they have, they're more high risk or whatever, then that's a probiotic that I'll recommend for them. So different microbes live in different places on the body. So one researcher did a test on people's belly buttons, and she found that in some people there are microbes that can only exist anywhere on this planet, only found in hydrothermal vents in like Yellowstone Park and places like that, in some people's belly buttons, alive.
I'm sorry. Wow.
And what are they doing there? What do they do? We don't know. So there's so many of them. You look at a yogurt container and it says like lactobacillus and bifidobacterium on it. Those are the two main types of microbes that are bacteria that we know in most people, unless they're severely immune compromised, they can take those two microbes, and that those microbes will have anti-inflammatory effects on their body. And the thing is that there's also strains. So there's like your whole like clan of your family is your last name, but there's only one you. And so that's the same thing with bacteria. Like there's lactobacillus, but then there's lactobacillus XYZ-13 and, QR-12. They're all cataloged as they discover them and research them according to what they do. So like some strains, there might be like, 1,000 different lactobacillus strains, but one of those strains will do something in your body that helps you sleep better at night. Or one of those strains will help to ease autistic symptoms or ADHD. So different strains do different things, even if it's of the same type of bacteria. And so that's why, like, not all of, like, you can't just go pick out one probiotic and expect to get like amazing results, because what you need it for might not be what's in there. Just like when you wouldn't take, like, I don't know, you wouldn't take echinacea if you didn't feel like you were sick, right? And it's kind of the same thing with probiotics, but what they've done is a lot of the companies have probably just researched what is like general for the general population, what most people will need to in an anti-inflammatory way or to help keep them regular, and they throw them all in this capsule and then that's their product. But that's why, like with the Ultraflora women's, there's just the 2 strains, I think, in that one, and that those 2 strains are specifically researched to better women's health, particularly.
For the vagina?
And they also help with urinary tract stuff. So, like you've got those microbes on the skin, you have different microbes in your armpits. So in each armpit can have different microbial colonies. They've been doing research on people that have like really bad BO and trying to transplant someone who doesn't have smelly armpits, like trying to swab their armpit and put it on the person that has the bad BO, but then the person with the bad BO can't shower for 2 weeks. And so not many people can actually go through with the whole thing, and you have to do it repeatedly. If it doesn't take and stuff, it's hard to get it to take.
I had a question about that. So how long do they stay on your skin? Like if you are unique in your makeup or what you're giving off, is it something that regenerates?
The idea is, yes, to get it to colonize so that it can regenerate. So what happens when you take a probiotic usually is that the probiotic goes in, your stomach acid kills a lot of it. It gets into your large intestine eventually, and then the ones that are alive come out and they like do their thing, and then you poop them out. So it's hard to get them to stick. So that's why it, like in Chinese medicine, we look at the body in terms of environmental factors. What does this person have an excess of, and what do they not have enough of? And then we administer treatments and herbs that encourage the growth of what they don't have enough of, and discourage the growth of what they have too much of, right? So like in terms of pitta, we would use cooling, nourishing herbs to help calm the fire and clear the heat. And oftentimes when there's a lot of heat, the heat like consumes the moisture. If there's a ton of moisture, chances are there's not a lot of heat unless there's a damp heat mix situation. So, and that's more sticky. So what you want to do is have like cooling, like clear fluid things in the diet, and also to administer herbs that encourage your body to generate cool, clear fluids in the body to protect the tissues from the heat while you also clear the heat. And so that's another way of saying, well, we don't have the exact name of the strains that are contributing to the heat and the dryness that results from it, the heat burning the fluids. But what we do know is that if we give this person X, Y, and Z, that's going to calm the heat down and it's going to generate fluids. And so that's what we do. So that's where, like, Chinese medicine and Ayurveda may not seem incredibly accurate to the Western science perspective, but what we've done is we've taken qualities and we're treating based on qualities and what we know a particular substance does, in what that particular substance qualities are and what it does in the presence of other qualities. And that's how we're doing things. Mm-hmm. So for thousands of years in Chinese medicine and Ayurvedic medicine, they've been giving herbs and treatments that are nourishing good microbes and eradicating colonies of microbes that are out of control that aren't so good for you. So you can have microbes that have a symbiotic relationship with you. So there's different types of relationships the microbes can have. Generally speaking, when a microbe comes in, it wants to make sure that it's going to stay alive, so it wants you to stay alive. So the microbes, when they're colonizing, they're looking for good terrain, like in the gut. A lot of it's in the gut. And from there, migrates to different parts of the body is what the thinking is, as a person is developing. And so, like, when a baby's born, they found that if the baby is born by a cesarean section, that their gut microbiome ends up being largely based on the bacteria that was on the nurses and doctors' hands and on the mother's skin. If a baby is born vaginally, that baby is largely colonized with microbes from the mother's vaginal canal, which translates into having a better immune system later in life. And that cesarean-born babies are more prone to having asthma and allergies later in life. And so what they've done so many studies that have shown this, that some hospitals are wise to it, and what they'll do when they take the baby out of, like, the mother's abdomen in a C-section, they'll also scoop out from her vaginal tract and smear it all over the baby's face and in the baby's mouth and nose. Because if they were born vaginally, they'd be it would be going in through their nose and their mouth. Mm-hmm. And so that's what they're trying to do in some instances, to help that infant's gut colonize the microbes that are naturally present in a situation where, they're born naturally without intervention. Because the microbes that get into the gut, they train your immune system to recognize what's part of your body and what's not. That's how our immune system gets trained. That's how our immune system knows I can eat, potatoes and cheese and whatever and not, have a reaction to it. And it knows when you're exposed to something that, like a pathogen, your immune system learns. And they're now looking at, like, pre-birth, what's happening in utero, because they found microbes in the placenta and they're not sure where they're coming from. They used to think that the womb was sterile up until, like, probably 10 years ago. Yeah. Now they're noticing that there's microbes there too. And so they're trying to figure out where they're coming from, how they're getting there, and what they do, what they are and what they do, and how they help with the development of the fetus. Or if they're getting in there and they shouldn't be, how they're harming the development of the fetus. And so, so the microbes that come in during your infancy are the ones that train your immune system. It pretty much codes everything. So what they think is happening, like with people that have sensitivities to certain foods, or like peanut allergies or wheat allergy, what they think is happening is that the protein that is in those foods is so similar to something the immune system learned earlier in life that is bad, that it needs to attack, that somehow along the way the body just it gets confused and it just starts attacking things that aren't dangerous to it. And that's another way that they are looking at autoimmune conditions as well, because in an autoimmune condition, your immune system's hyperactive against your own tissue. And so, or against things it's not supposed to be, and then the residual inflammatory effect becomes a problem. So, which is kind of what happened with long COVID with people. The immune system gets so hyped up, it can't. And even a lot of people that passed from COVID, their immune system got so jacked up, it just couldn't shut off, and they kept spiking fevers, and it just kept getting worse and worse. And a lot of it was not just the viral load, but maybe the inflammatory response that was triggered by the viral load that led to the complications. So, so the microbes in the body, the microbes in the body are like hugely important. And the huge thing about like the microbiome to me is that it just shows us how much a part of nature we are. That we are not separate from nature, you know. And I think that we grow up in a Judeo-Christian culture learning that we're here to caretake or to abuse nature, and really we're here to caretake nature, including ourselves. Like, we are nature, and without those little buggers helping us out, we wouldn't be able to do all the things that we do. We wouldn't be able to thrive. Those microbes, like for example, if you take an antibiotic, I give people a probiotic that is an anti-yeast. So it's a yeast, a good yeast that crowds out candida. So if you take a probiotic and you're prone to yeast infection from the antibiotic, I give this other I don't give you a microbe-based probiotic. I'll give you a yeast-based probiotic, because the antibiotic is antibacteria. It can't kill a yeast. So you use the yeast to crowd out the other yeast. Do you see what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So it seems like the Chinese or Indian ways that you were talking about are all relative.
It's all always relative. Yin and yang is even always relative. There's, yeah. Yep.
Because I remember when you were talking about, what to eat in the spring, we were all so taken aback that no raw foods or cold foods. It's like they're not bad. It's just the time to like balance that.
Well, it's not that they're bad. It's just that there tends to be an overconsumption of them in the warmer months. And in the warmer months, even though you feel more heat in your body and you feel more affected by the heat, your internal fire is actually weaker. Your digestive fire is actually weaker in the warmer months.
Okay.
And that's like naturally the idea of siesta is sort of a mini example of that. So like in Mediterranean cultures, when they take a siesta, or in South America, they're doing it at the time of day that it's the most brutally hot. They're going into a dark space, they're chilling out, they're calming down. They're not outside running. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But that's what we do. And that's the opposite. And so so it's not that you can't ever eat cold or raw things. It's the overabundance that we tend to gravitate toward those things with in the time when we have a weakened digestive fire.
Okay.
And traditionally, they didn't eat a lot of cold and raw stuff in those cultures because I think for a couple of reasons. Like if you're constantly exposed to the elements, You don't have antibiotics yet. You don't have heat in the winter, and you don't have AC in the summer, and you have you're going to be more sensitive to things. You're going to notice more things about how your body's feeling and how you feel when you eat certain things. And I think they paid attention to that, and they recognized that, you know, if you eat a lot of raw things that aren't cooked, you're subjecting yourself to more microbes that actually might be harmful, because stuff comes in on lettuce. Like Dr. Lod, when he um, teaches, he talks about, Dr. Lod is the Ayurvedic doctor that runs the Ayurvedic Institute, which is like the biggest Ayurveda school in America. And he talks about how, like, if you have parasites or something like that, you should not be eating salads, because that's like, it's like you're almost feeding the parasites. You're trying to treat parasites, but you're taking in food that could actually have parasites on it. So if you cook it, it can kill a lot of that stuff off, but you don't overcook it to the point where it loses its nutrients either. Like if you go to like a real, like you were talking about real Thai food, if you go to a real Chinese restaurant, an enormous amount of vegetable dishes that are just lightly, so everything is so bright green.
Yes.
All the colors are very bright because it's not overcooked at all, and it's very just lightly cooked, and it's seasoned perfectly, you know, not too much, not too little. And you can taste the sweetness in the food too, because it's just so, like, there's so much moisture content in it. And so they don't even, like, we drink all this water in our culture, and they don't do that everywhere else in the world. You know, they're not walking around with water bottles like we do. Their food is just different.
Wow.
And the more like whole foods you eat, it's going to be more nutritious and nourishing than, like, even, we're not, like, according to Ayurveda, you're not even supposed to eat leftovers. I mean, can you imagine? Let alone microwaving things. And in Chinese medicine, if somebody has, like, we'll give bags of herbs to people that they're supposed to cook over the course of a week or 2 weeks, and then they have those leftovers that they cooked, and they put it in the fridge, but you're not supposed to put it in the microwave. You either reheat it on the stove or you pour some hot water in it and mix it up. You don't put it in the microwave because it's recognized that it loses its qi, or its potency and its vitality. So yeah, so there, and it may be that there's like even microbes that will still exist even in the presence of heat that you need in your body, that can come in with that food that you're not killing if you're not overcooking it. That could be a thing too. So, and then the cold, they've actually done scientific studies that show that if you have colder foods, that they're harder to digest. And raw foods are harder to digest too. So if you're working on stoking someone's digestive fire, and you're putting cold on the fire. So it's not just like the quality that the food imparts in the system, whether it's hot, warm, neutral, or cool or cold, but it's also the temperature of it. Your body has to warm that up, so it has to take energy to do that. So they're looking at like a very subtle level, what's going on, not this kind of gross level that we tend to look at things at. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's why the cold is counterindicated, because it's actually cold and raw is counterindicated all year. It's not just in the spring.
Okay.
It's in the summer too. And summer's even more so, because in the summertime, that's when the digestive fire is the weakest in the body, interestingly enough, because the heat comes up and out toward the surface in the summer. And then in the winter, it goes in and it's stronger. So that's why, like, the foods that are naturally available in the wintertime are heavier, like nuts and meats, you know, fatty, heavy, proteiny things. And that's because we have the digestive capability, or we developed probably in tandem with it, the digestive capability at that time of year to be able to break that stuff down. So, so you have microbes all over your skin. And I think in Ayurveda, that's why they use so much oil, because I think the oil is used to feed the good microbes on the skin. So it feeds, so it does good things for your cells, but it's also feeding the microbes. And with the herbs and stuff that we take, they're like prebiotics. So you have prebiotics and you have probiotics. Prebiotics are the food for the microbes in your gut. What did I just say? Probiotics?
Pre.
Yes, prebiotics are the food for the microbes in your gut. Probiotics are the microbes in your gut. So when you're taking a probiotic, it will have, when it says all the strains and how many millions or billions, that's actual little microbes that are in the capsule. And then when it says it has like a prebiotic blend or something like that, it'll have, a lot of times they'll use acacia as one of them. Um, Lots of different things. It's basically different types of fiber, because the gut microbes thrive on fiber. And that's why I don't recommend people eliminate um, grains from their diet unless they really have to, because grains,
Eliminate?
hmm because grains are a primary food source for the good microbes in your gut.
Eliminate grains?
I recommend people don't eliminate, yeah,
Don't
because,
eliminate grains.
correct,
Oh, I thought you said
because the grains are a good food source for the microbes in your gut. So we're not just thinking about feeding our own cells and feeding our own tissues, but we're thinking about feeding those helpers inside of us that allow us to thrive. So you think about, like, the gut brain axis, it's called. So we know all this information about how the gut uh, has a lot of serotonin in it, and there's serotonin in the brain, and serotonin helps you to feel good.
Good.
And their microbes in the gut produce serotonin. And so there's not just that, but there's the actual like connection between the brain and the gut, and the information that gets transferred between them via the vagus nerve and some other pathways. And they believe that some of those other pathways are microbe related, but they don't exactly know how. They don't know all the microbes in the gut. They don't know hardly any of the viruses in the virome, because we actually don't have the scientific equipment that can see things that small. So we have an entire virome we know nothing about.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And so, people think that they have this brain fog and all these things going on, and then they're like, oh, I have candida. Well, it might not be that. It might be many different things. Candida is a yeast that is naturally occurring in the body. It's just when it overgrows. So in terms of the microbiome, we don't look at anything as like inherently bad or anything as inherently good, because something inherently good, like I mentioned in the case of SIBO, can just be in the wrong place at the wrong time and create a problem. And that's what ama is. In Ayurveda, we call it ama. In Chinese medicine, we call it dampness. Ama means toxin. And a toxin is pretty much anything that's where it shouldn't be in the body. And so you can get microbes that travel to the wrong places and lodge in the tissues and create pain. That's the theory behind leaky gut. So with leaky gut, if you think about your cells in your gut, they should be like pushed together. They should be like a wall, like an impenetrable wall that you can't slip a crack of paper, like a piece of paper through, right? There's no cracks. But what happens with leaky gut is there's some kind of damage to the mucosal barrier on the inside, facing the hole inside the tube. And that when that gets broken down, the microbes that help with like nourishing the cells that produce the mucus that cause the barrier to be there so the microbes can thrive, those microbes start to vanish and the cells start to come apart from each other. And when that happens, microbes, food debris, anything, viruses, can get through that junction, that gap, and they get into the lymphatic system and into the tissue in the gut. And then you hope that the lymphatic system traps them. But if not, they can get in the general circulation, whether they're traveling through the interstitium, which is the connective tissue and all the fluid, or if they're traveling through the bloodstream. Wherever they travel through, they can get a place and they can get stuck in there. And then they start to colonize. So then that's like the idea with Lyme. So you get Lyme, and then people get these joint pains that don't go away, and then they'll get antibiotics and they'll feel better, and then it will come back. And it'll get worse around the full moon. It's honestly because the life cycle of the spirochetes correlates to the moon cycle. So you can kill them off for a little while, but then they have this biofilm. They learn to protect themselves from the antibiotics, and eventually it makes it really hard to get rid of the infection because they keep reproducing every month. And then when they have that spurt where they're, active, then it gets worse again. And so that's the idea, is that the microbe gets in a certain way, and then it works its way through your system, and it finds a spot and it hangs out there, and then it reproduces and creates a colony. And that's like what ama is in Ayurveda. It's a toxin. And in Chinese medicine too. And in Chinese medicine, there's a place in the body called the Moyuan. Well, Moyuan means membrane source. That's the mesentery and the omentum. And that's like the tissue that surrounds and stabilizes the entire GI tract. And so the idea is that toxins can get out of the gut and they can linger in the mesentery, and then they can create a sickness later on. Whether it's something you catch in the winter, you can actually get the symptoms of it in the spring. I suspect that this is what's been happening with COVID with some people, because I'll see someone and they'll have these COVID-y like symptoms, and then it's like a couple weeks later they'll have more like weird little COVID-y like symptoms, and then whammo, they get super sick. And it can be like weeks after they first start. And it's just very strange. So it seems to me that that's what's happening, is that COVID is like a lingering pathogen in some people, and they'll get like the GI stuff first. And then they'll get over that and they'll think they're getting better for like a day or two, and then they'll get the respiratory piece. And they may test negative while they have the GI stuff, right? Because it's not there. They're not doing a butt swab. You know what I mean? So, and I think a lot of people are testing negative anyway at this point, but that's besides the point. So that's the idea of lingering pathogens. So like in Ayurveda, in Chinese medicine, in like the naturopathic world, we use a lot of castor oil packs. And castor oil packs on the belly, because I think that it's because it helps to pull the stuff out of the mesentery so the body can eliminate it. I think that's the major detox piece. So we talk a lot about castor oil packs over the liver to help the liver detox, because it helps to pull stuff out of the liver into the general circulation so that the body can zap it and get rid of it. And I think it's doing that with these lingering pathogens too in the mesentery when you do a castor oil pack. So, and castor oil packs can also help with regularity. Castor oil binds to fat soluble toxins, so things that you can't get rid of doing like the maple syrup juice thing and all of that, like the things that we are juicing or just fasting, you can't get rid of fat soluble toxins like plastics and stuff by doing that. You have to have an oil that grabs it. And so that's part of why castor oil and oils in Ayurveda they're feeding the good microbes, but they're also binding to stuff that shouldn't be there and trapping it in their little globules so they can either like pull it into itself or so that your body can eliminate it more effectively.
So sometimes there's oils you put on your skin, but those packs are in a
So the pack is actually a cloth, and then you drizzle the oil on the cloth. You put the cloth on your skin, and then you can put moist heat over that, or you can I've been sleeping with one on overnight, and it's like comforting because it's weighty, and the pressure of it is like calming, but also the unctuousness of the oil, it like your body heat warms the oil up, and it just feels good. Some nights I can wear it for the entire night, and some nights I wake up and I feel like there's like too much stuff gonna get in my system if I don't take it off right away. So
What do
then
you
I'll
mean,
take
too
it
much
off.
stuff?
Gunk that's built up, like it's detoxing to the point where I'm gonna get agitated or feel crappy, so then I'll take it off. Um, so so you have microbes everywhere. You have microbes in your eyes that help with keeping your eyes tearing when they're supposed to and fighting pathogens. You have microbes in your sinus cavity. You have microbes everywhere. And
So what
and
about the
on you.
dry skin brushing or using the Ayurvedic gloves? That's okay to do?
Yep.
You're not harming the good microbes up.
I think that you can look at it in a couple of different ways. Like if you've been exposed to some kind of a yeast or a fungus, it will help to get that off of you, but also brings more circulation to the surface of the skin. And the other thing with the dry brushing gloves is that the raw silk, when you rub it on your skin repeatedly, it creates a static charge that helps to pull your lymphatic system, so it helps your lymphatic system circulate better so that you detox better. Um, oh, what did that make me think of? I just thought of something I want to tell you. Oh yeah, so one of the mechanisms they think that microbes and other cells can go through the body through is the interstitium. So the interstitium is all of your connective tissue and all the fluid that surrounds the connective tissue and that's in all of the tissues of the body. The interstitium is actually considered by some to be an organ as well because it's a fluid movement that exists and it flows in a specific way and you can't see it on a cadaver. You have to be trying to observe it on a living organism or else you can't see it working. So they just discovered that a few years ago too. But in the bodywork world, craniosacral therapists, lots of body workers, massage therapists, craniosacral and osteopaths, myofascial release people, they're all training themselves to feel very, very subtle movement in the body, and they're feeling for the flows of the different fluids in the body that are part of the interstitium and where the physical tissue of the body might be restricted so that it's not allowing for that circulation to flow. They've made immunizations. They're working with immunizations that you can put a patch, like you could put the pneumonia patch on your arm and it will affect the whole rest of the body. So you don't need a shot, you need a patch. They have no idea how the immune system in the gut and the other parts of the body is figuring out that you've got that patch on that's creating that immune response. Like they don't know how it works, but they think it's through the interstitium somehow, and it's related to the microbiome as well, because there could be this thing where different microbes in different parts of the body are communicating with each other through the interstitium. Like all the information that's coming out about mushrooms and the root systems of trees and stuff, and how everything's interacting under the ground and communicating, sending electrical signals to each other and stuff. Like they could be doing that across the body too. So we have no idea. But they are looking at people's microbial signatures, and they're looking at different cancers, like I think at Mayo Clinic. And they're trying to target, like do targeted treatments for people based on their constitution. Maybe not from an Ayurvedic or Chinese medicine standpoint, but there is this idea of constitution in Western medicine that's really gaining some traction due to a lot of the microbiome research, and that different people are going to that have the same cancer are going to respond differently to the same treatment, and that treatments need to be altered based on people's microbial signatures, or figuring out what microbes might target certain cancer cells and using microbial medicine. So there are many, many possibilities in medicine in terms of the microbiome. And a healthy microbiome isn't that you have like a ton of lactobacillus strains in your body. It's that you have a diverse amount of that you have a diversity of lactobacillus strains. So it's not that you have like, 50 billion lactobacillus period. It's that you have 50 billion lactobacillus A, 50 billion lactobacillus B, C, D, E. And that's because every single thing that we do affects our microbiome. We don't even know how or in all the ways or all the things that we do, but everything they research and they monitor the microbiome, they find that that thing is affecting the microbiome in some way.
I hope this doesn't derail, but do screens and I don't know, just having a screen in front of your face for hours and hours and hours each day affect the microbiome?
I haven't looked that up specifically, but it's something to definitely Google, because they might have done a study on that by now. I don't know, because all the research I did was like 2017, right? 2018. So, but they might have something like that by now, because the screen emits radiation. So there's so many different ways this could affect us. Like the screen emits radiation, and any kind of energy, like anything coming at us, can affect us. And so there might be microbes that are more sensitive to certain radio, I don't know, electromagnetic energies or radiations. You know what I mean? So it could encourage the growth of some species and diminish the growth of others, being on the screen, having the light shining in your face. And then the act of just sitting. The sitting is huge. And we know this for our own body cells, but the microbes in the gut and in the rest of the body, they generally speaking want us to be moving, and they're on a circadian rhythm.
Yeah.
That's all.
So I know, right? So there's a circadian rhythm to the wake and activity and sleep cycle of the microbes in the body. And for example, the microbes that are responsible for metabolizing food are most active between 10 and 2. They're most active during daytime, which is also when Ayurveda and Chinese medicine say that we should be eating our biggest meal of the day. And Lama Lanang told me that in Tibet, in the monastery, they eat their biggest meal of the day like early in the morning. Like they're up at like 3 or 4. So their biggest meal is before noon. It's like way before noon, like 6 o'clock. And so, and he said that it is looked at as, so they practice ahimsa, or non-harming, and that it's not considered ahimsa to eat after dark. or to eat late in the day, because you're harming the 10,000 beings that live in your body. So, yeah. And if you're reading like any like ancient Indian or Chinese stories or medical texts, everything's the 10,000, the 100,000, the 72,000, the 108,000. It's like it means that it's like all the things. And there's a lot of them, and that's why it's a big number. But it's not obviously exact, but that's why he said that you're harming the 10,000 things, because they knew there were a shit ton of microbes in the body. They didn't know what they were, but they knew there was something alive in there that was making us go. And that it was harmful to them if we ate when it wasn't sunny out, or when, it wasn't the daylight hours.
Yeah, there's such a consideration for them as a thing.
Because by being considerate to them, we're doing ourselves good too. And ahimsa applies to ourselves. It's not just to everybody else. And so, yeah. So, okay. So
how
we
do
were.
you figure these people out, these things out?
How did they figure them out?
Like, how do you start to? I guess it's the reactions or the things that you're experiencing, and then you manipulate it from there. But how do you know if we're all so unique? How do you know how to work with your microbiome?
I think the best way to do it at this point is to look at yourself from an Eastern medicine perspective and balance out your Vata Pitta Kapha. Balance out whatever elements are out of balance. That's the way to do it, plain and simple. Because if they can't even measure, if they don't even know all the viruses in the body that are responsible for helping us or responsible for hindering us, like you can't do a stool sample and think you know everything. What you know is what came out. You don't know what's still in there.
Right.
So, and you don't even know everything that's still in there. There's so
before you said something about I'll get back to fecal transplants.
Yeah, so with the fecal transplants, what they've done is, and they do this here, like at Saratoga Hospital, they'll do this only if you have C. diff, nothing else. So with C. diff, it's like a antibiotic resistant infection in the gut, and it can give you diarrhea until you are not here anymore. And so there are people that, and so what do they give for it? More antibiotics. So the people that repeatedly don't respond to the antibiotics and get sicker and sicker and sicker, they don't have anything else to do. So they have to send for special permission to use fecal transplants. And they'll take, so they have donors, just like a sperm bank, only for poop. And so healthy people that have to go through this rigorous, blood tests and all that kind of stuff, go and donate their poop, and then it gets treated however they treat it in the lab. They can't kill everything, so they can't just like heat it or whatever. Maybe they can dehydrate it. They might pull out things that they don't want in it or whatever. And then it can be administered via like a colonoscopy and injected into the rectum of the person that is sick. And what happens is the good microbes, that's why I was talking about the diversity.
Yeah.
The diverse good microbes in that stool sample colonize that person's gut and crowd out the C. diff. And so the C. diff gets eradicated, and that person is now healthier than they probably were before they had it. So the measure of a healthy microbiome is a diverse microbiome. And a diverse microbiome it's generally fostered by living in harmony with nature, with yourself, and eating a shit ton of fiber. Like a lot of fibrous foods. Like the healthiest people on the planet are these like tribes in these remote places that don't have any chronic diseases, no autoimmune conditions, and they chew on like roots that we wouldn't even be able to chew with our teeth because we're used to chewing soft food. So, and they're extremely fibrous. So the fecal transplants have they have like ramifications for many different illnesses. So there's evidence that they can help reverse autism, cure ADHD, cure all kinds of like gastrointestinal and skin ailments and stuff like that. Cure or stabilize people who have severe mental illnesses just by a fecal transplant. However, the only thing that is like by law allowed to have fecal transplant in this country right now is C. diff. And so
What's that stand for again? CETA?
Something difficile, it's a bacteria. And so Clostridium or something like that. So some people that have these other conditions, they've done like lots of different things. So some people will go to their next door neighbor who runs marathons and be like, hey, can I have some of your poop? And then give themselves an enema. Some people, yes, that does happen. And it's illegal
Wow.
because guess what? Your poop is considered a pharmaceutical agent. So you are not actually allowed to give somebody else your poop because it's like giving them your prescription.
That's fascinating.
Uh-huh.
Oh my gosh.
So some people will go down to like Costa Rica or South America and get fecal transplants, and they'll go to a hospital that administers them for a lot of people will go down because they've got like severe like OCD or other kinds of things that are just like driving them crazy, or they have, colitis or something. And so they'll go down south and they'll stay for a little while. They'll get it administered rectally or whatever, and then they'll like desiccate it or dry it out and give the person a bunch of capsules to take home, and then they can continue the treatment while they're at home by taking the capsule orally.
So it has to be like consistent for a period of time.
It seems that way unless it's done like they do it for C. diff. I don't know if they have to administer it more than once, but for other conditions,
Wow.
it seems that that's the case, that it has to be for a certain length of time.
And then
Excuse
if
me.
your body adapts or takes
Well, the
that on-
idea is that you hope that the microbes colonize,
Okay.
because if not, you're never going to be able to stop taking it.
Okay.
Same thing with probiotics.
So Susan, she gets it's called pre-pro. I know she does a lot of research on all her vitamins and herbs. I still haven't taken the spore probiotic that Jennifer got me because she like scared me. She's like, you're gonna get really bad stomach pain and all that. And I know and you told me to take it at night, so I think I'll start.
It can make you uncomfortable. That doesn't mean it's going to, but it can. It can make you
The
uncomfortable.
best time to have it is at night, right? That's what you told me. 'Cause
That's
was
when I
having-
would do it. I mean, yeah.
And so we have these. It's called pre-pro, and they're not you don't keep them refrigerated.
Right.
It's a probiotic, and it says pre-pro, so it's a pre and probiotic.
Yep.
And I thought that if it was a good, I'm thinking that if it was a good supplement, why wouldn't it have to be refrigerated?
Because, so like with a spore-based probiotic, those don't need to be, because they're in a spore that protects them from the environment. So the bacteria inside of that spore knows when it's inside your
Oh.
body.
Oh.
And it doesn't come out of the spore until it gets in your large intestine.
Oh, but the one I texted you, the ones that I got from Jennifer, they have to be refrigerated.
Yes,
Why?
because if they get beneath 72 degrees for an extended length of time, they'll die.
But the other ones won't because they're protected.
They're in a spore.
So it doesn't mean,
But there are some
it doesn't
shell.
mean that these are better than that or this is better.
Well, they can both work. So they stabilize some of them with chemicals or something or some treatment process so that they don't have to be refrigerated.
So that's not really good.
I prefer ones that are refrigerated just because I'm kind of old school. But the other thing with probiotics is they've done studies, and for certain, if you're taking a probiotic to help boost your immune system, that the strains they usually use in those, while they're alive in the capsule, they're still like doing stuff. And one of the things they're doing is creating metabolites. And metabolites are basically what microbes create that help your body's metabolism. What does that mean? Well, it can help with anti-inflammatory processes. It can help with your immune system. And so those metabolites are still activating for your system, even if all the microbes are dead. Or there might be a part of the microbe in the capsule that even if the microbe's dead, like I don't know, the shell on its leg might be something that does something for our bodies that's beneficial. So just because.
Does it matter if I should I take the probiotic at the end of the when I'm just before bed when yes, I'm gonna have dinner when I go home. I
Yeah.
feel bad now about my 10,000 beings here.
I know.
But it's okay to have I'm gonna say I have dinner, like in an hour.
And then have your probiotic with dinner.
Have it with dinner?
You can even do
Does
that.
Does it matter? Or like after like an hour after, does it matter?
I don't think it matters.
Okay.
I mean, they're there anyway, living in your body, And everything we do affects them. Like if we eat too fast, if we eat when we're upset,
Yep.
that affects them. Flying affects them adversely. Crossing time zones affects our microbiome adversely.
In what way?
If we're not sleeping.
Does it do it, is it like a blip or it's like major downturn or shift?
I think it's a shift that so your body is going to recover from most things in whatever way it can. So with that specifically, I'm trying to remember if it said if they tracked people 6 months and a year later. I'm not sure how temporary it is. But with taking antibiotics, it can take 6 months to 2 years to get those colonies to grow back.
Wow.
That's why diversity is key, because you take an antibiotic, it's killing the microbes that are out of control in your system, and it's also killing some of the good microbes in your system. But if you have a diverse microbiome, you have lots of different kinds of those good microbes. So chances are it's not going to wipe all of them out. It's just going to take out some of them. So some of our good microbes might be super, super, super sensitive to Cipro. And some of them might be super sensitive to a Z-Pak. But the other ones that are like those, that do the same thing in the body, might not be as sensitive to Z-Pak.
What about prescription drugs like omeprazole?
Same. Any drugs. Anything. They're not, so omeprazole it's not gonna kill the microbes the way an antibiotic will, because an antibiotic is a microbe killer. Mm-hmm. But it's still going to adversely affect them. It will affect them for as long as you're on it, and maybe as long as a person is on it. Maybe that may be why they say, like, part of the reason why they say not to be on it for an extended length of time, because what they're finding is the adverse effects people get from it are a result of what it does to the microbes in the body. It's possible that that's the case. Is it possible that that's the case with anything, though? Any, like, antidepressants, Advil, it doesn't matter what it is, everything affects the gut microbiome. Not eating in season, not eating at regular meal times, like all of the things that they talk about in Chinese medicine and Ayurveda, gradually, little by little, Western science comes out with like the tangible reason for it. Even with the food stuff, there was a book that came out a few years ago about something eat at the right time or something like that. And it was all this research on circadian rhythms and how the body digests food and what time of day it digests food. And it completely backed up everything that's said in Chinese medicine and Ayurveda for thousands of years. Like all the research said it, except Chinese medicine and Ayurveda are actually more strict about it. Like what their research found is that you have to eat before 8 o'clock. What they found is you have to eat before 8 o'clock at night, or else you become more insulin resistant. But there's more than just insulin resistance that is a factor, and that's why in Chinese medicine and Ayurveda they say to stop eating even earlier. But in Western medicine they haven't found all that information yet. I will, yeah. But I won't eat a lot.
Yes. But
Yep.
I have been tipping the scales so that it's lighter at night.
Like I had my biggest meal yesterday, I think at like 4. You know what I mean? Like I try not to eat too much at night. And you know, some days I'm better at it than others. You know, it's hard with our lifestyle, and you know, but you take the information, you do the best that you can, right?
I like what you always set the intention. Start with the intention.
Yeah, yeah,
It works.
yep. So I think I imparted to you like the major stuff that I feel is important for everyone to know about the microbiome. And if you have any questions about it, please let me know. Bring your questions next week, ask me during the week, whatever. You know, write stuff down so you don't forget. And yeah, I know it's a lot. It's a lot, but it's really fascinating. It's
It
like you're
is.
learning about yourself, you know?
Yes, it's
It is.
fascinating.
So this is gonna be such a, I don't think this is a smart question. So is your immune system everywhere too? Your microbiome's everywhere. Is your immune system also?
Well, pretty much, because there's that awareness that tells your white blood cells to go to a certain place or your killer T cells to go to a certain place, right? So that awareness is there somehow. So whether it's in the cells or there are actual immune cells everywhere, that's a good question.
It's like there's all these abstract systems happening
Yeah, all the time.
at the same time.
Yeah. And they're communicating with each other. And that's what Mr. Iyengar always would say, is that prana or chi is the great communicator. That the chi is the communicator. It's a communicator between each other, it's a communicator between the mind and the body, and it's a communicator with all the things in the body.
That's so cool. Yeah. The force, like a life force.
The force. Yeah. That's what it is. That's what the force is. I mean, he didn't get all that stuff from nowhere. And the Jedis are yogis or kung fu, you know, they're still yogis. They're kung fu masters that live in those places are meditating, and they're doing internal cultivation practices like a yogi. So they're a form of a yogi.
So I know you explained acupuncture and like checking a pulse and you can feel maybe areas where there are blockages or barriers. Are you detecting, would you call that chi?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Which is a flow.
Chi flows.
Chi flows, it's not a flow. Okay.
Yeah.
Very interesting. It's just wild that like any little thing we do is affecting your microbiome, and so it's like,
Even if you have pets.
mm,
And the researchers found that it's better to have pets
darn, I'm allergic to pets.
and houseplants.
I have a lot of houseplants.
There you go.
Okay. All right.